Ms. Bichotte.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On the prevailing wage bill, will the sponsor yield?
Yes, I will.
Sponsor yields.
Thank you. This bill would have a provision on construction projects performed under private contract that will subject them to pay prevailing wages to union and non-union workers. Is that true?
Yes, union and non-union contractors and workers.
And there's a threshold of $5 million, the cost of the construction to be $5 million, coupled with getting 30% of the public finance.
Yeah, the threshold is at least a project that is over $5 million and a project that is receiving at least 30% of the construction cost in taxpayer subsidies.
Okay, so when you're saying taxpayer subsidies, that's like tax abatements, non-cash savings, loans, credits, these types of tax savings?
Yes, to name a few.
Okay, great. And on this bill, there are some exemptions like affordable housing, owner-occupied dwellings, as well as owners who own no more than 4 dwellings, nonprofits, and more.
Yes, the intent was to have some exemptions that would leave out the smaller type of projects throughout the state.
Okay, okay, great. Can you tell me how the diversification of workers being hired will be enforced?
Yes, that will be enforced through the Department of Labor, in particular the fiscal officer as defined in the statute, which is the commissioner of the Department of Labor.
Okay.
I'm sorry for interrupting, but I should say that the provisions also require the commissioner to collaborate with the director of the MWBE program.
Okay, that's interesting. I want to know also, are MWBE firms, are they exempt?
No, they are not.
Okay. Just a note, do you know the population of minorities and women in the state or in the cities, in the big, large city? Do you know like the overall population?
Not off the top of my head, no.
Well, they're more than 50%. In New York City, I can say that the population of minority and women are at least 60%. So when we think about the population and the tax dollars that we're getting, a lot of them are coming from minorities and women.
And that's a very good point to raise. I would say that under this bill, we are now creating projects that are requiring that participation by minority and women business enterprises, that prior to passing this into law, there is no requirement. Mm-hmm. The requirement is currently with public projects, it's not on all of the projects that would that are financed through private dollars. What this will do is say if there is that threshold of taxpayer dollars used, then now, like public works projects, you now have to hire whatever those standards are for minority and women business enterprises.
And how could we ensure that the non-union workers will get the prevailing wage?
It will be done exactly the way it's enforced under the current system for public projects.
Okay. Thank you. On the bill, Mr. Speaker?
On the bill, ma'am.
Thank you for allowing me to speak on this bill addressing prevailing wages. As the chair of the Minority Women-Owned Business Enterprise, I'm always in support of a thriving economy. This promotes the health and the welfare all around. As we have seen during this very unfortunate circumstance, we are in, with the coronavirus pandemic, we are all connected. All industries, all of the workforce, all of the people in our society are connected. When we increase wages for workers, we stimulate the economy, and this is proven. Increased wages will help yield increased living standards, which will yield increased spending, which will yield increased bill payments, which will yield increased profits, which will then yield increased and improved personal welfare, which then yields a healthy economy. We, as a people, can and we stimulate economy. I want to thank the sponsor of this bill for introducing and ensuring that fair wages, living wages, especially in places like New York City with a high cost of living, are instituted in these type of projects that are typically are always getting public funded support from our tax-paying constituents. With that said, I'm happy to see that there are some exemptions for this project, like affordable housing, nonprofits, smaller developments, which by its own definition are doing the work of the people, developing good public projects so that our people can benefit, our community members, many of them who are unfortunate. Now, I do look forward that the provision for MWBEs and hiring minorities and women are intact. We need to collect the data, not only on the apprenticeship level, but on the whole workforce level. Very often, there is a disparity in terms of how many minorities and women are hired in the construction field. We have a pool of people who are hired through an apprenticeship pipeline, which has been a progressive movement and tool to hire more minority and women, but still, we can do a lot more. We need to understand how many of these minority women are excelling, are becoming journeymen, and are a representation of the entire workforce. I also want to thank the sponsor for making changes to this bill, for a meeting with myself and my colleague, Assemblymember Dickens, who could not be here today, and people like representatives like the 400 Foundation, who were a group of pastors who represent churches and represent developments in their community who were fighting to make sure that when we institute this, that affordable housing and smaller developments are included in the discussion. I certainly want to call them out, Reverend Mutu, Reverend Backus, Reverend Miller. I want to thank them because they've been here every week educating, and our sponsor was very open-minded in working with staff, program and council, and making sure that they too, those communities and small projects were included. Mr. Speaker, I'm going to be voting in affirmative on this bill because I believe in fair wages. I believe that this bill will help achieve that. Obviously, there are areas that needs to be tweaked, and I look forward to working with the sponsor so that we can continue to promote and expand the concept of prevailing wage that will stimulate the economy, and making sure that it's an equitable one as well. In particular, with the minority women business enterprise, there needs to be a system where there's an equitable distribution. We have had histories, as mentioned, where minorities and women enterprise, as well as minority women workers, were not getting their fair share. This is now an opportunity to do so. Sometimes it's just very hard to get the resources, the liquidity, the working capital to do these projects. This is the right time. So again, I look forward to making sure that as we progress with this bill and everything that we do here in the state of New York, that equity is looked in all aspects, and that we invite our stakeholders and our colleagues to participate in these discussions. Again, I thank the sponsor, and I will be voting in affirmative for this bill. Thank you.